Yo, what's up, guys? What's up, Ember or DCEFC? It's your boy Insu here. I am trying to record on my laptop. I've never done this before, so I'm really excited that I can record on my really crappy laptop. I got my smoothie here, got my Bible here, got my water bottle here, got my lovely wife there, got my Bob's Burgers here. So we got the whole crew. We're gonna do a little devotional today. I got this idea from I guess basically every other youth pastor in the world. It seems like with all the time that we have nowadays, everybody's been recording a bunch of these digital devotionals. Um, my wife just said don't post it to Facebook because then it'll make it seem like I want to get all the attention, and I know what an attention thief I am, so I won't do that. Let's see. First question I got. This one is from Jamie from Houston, Texas. Jamie says, "Insu, can you do a devotional on difficult times?" And okay, that's a good question, Jamie. We'll get back to you. And got another question. This one is from Henry. Henry from Dallas. Henry says, "Insu, can you do a series about prayer?" Good question, Henry. And then I got another one. This one is from Jacob. Jacob in Denver. Hey, we got a Jacob too. We got a question from Jacob. He says, "Hey, Insu, can you do a series about prayer in difficult times?" Hey, good question, guys. I think we should do a little devotional prayer on difficult times. And so that's what we're going to be doing for the next few weeks. We're going to do a little series on praying through the Bible and looking to the Bible for some examples about how we can pray, especially amidst this COVID crisis. Obviously, a lot of people are struggling and suffering, both emotionally and physically, as well as mentally and financially. So I don't have all the answers, but the Bible does, and so maybe we can look to some of these and hope that from these you can be encouraged, and maybe we'll get some laughs out of it, because I need to try to entertain you a little bit, but also hopefully give you guys some good content that is helpful. So if some of this seems a little rusty, please subscribe below and put your thoughts. Link is here. Let me put the link is this. Let me write it down. Link is right here. Can you see that right there? I don't know if. Yep. So if you have any feedback, leave your comments below. Make sure to subscribe. And okay. Anyhow, all the fluff is out of the way. It was really good meeting you guys that first week. Really impressed by how dedicated you guys are to the group, Ember Group or DCFC Youth. Ember's probably better. DCFC just sounds too long. Speaking of which, actually in Dallas, I had a group that was DCFC. I think that's a Dallas Chinese Fellowship Church. Maybe you'll get to meet them someday. All right, anyhow, okay. I'm getting distracted. Once again, have some patience with me. I've never done this before, so just be a little patient with me if this is a little rusty or crude. I'm going to try to do it in one take because I don't know how to edit videos. So if I mess up or burp or something bad happens during the video, we'll just have to live with it. Here's an opening question. When was a time you were disappointed? When was a time you were disappointed? Give you a minute to maybe think about that a little bit while I finish my delicious smoothie. Blueberries. Honestly, I feel like sorry, I got the sniffles. I feel like this is a good question, especially in our day and age, because as I was talking to you guys last week, it is a season where there's been a lot of disappointments. I know for a lot of you seniors, you guys can't graduate physically the way you want to. Maybe some of your beloved or unbeloved orchestra or band performances have been canceled or postponed. I know for a lot of student athletes, they can't compete for their final season. And other things too, like, you guys have friends, you guys have people that you want to hang out with that you can't. and it's just kind of discouraging, And so maybe there's a bunch of different examples from this season how you guys were expecting something um, and it didn't happen. And I know I've had disappointments in my life. Things that came up short, things that I wish that could have happened, but didn't. Um, I feel like I don't know why this one comes to mind, but one of the biggest disappointments I had when I was in high school. I really wanted to win this award. I was an aspiring artist, and I wanted to win this stupid little award at my high school. And I remember they gave it to the other guy, and I didn't win. And I just remember just being like so crushed by that stupid little award. But at the time, like it meant a lot to me, and I was disappointed. And so let's dig a little deeper. Um, how should you pray during disappointment times? Whether right now you're just disappointed that you can't go outside, or maybe some of you are even disappointed you can't go to school, or disappointed in other ways, just about like you can't visit your favorite restaurants. Maybe you really have a lot of cabin fever and just are stuck at home. So like, how do you pray during disappointment times? Like, what does God want you to do, and who does God want you to be during disappointment times? And I think the point is this. I think the point is we can look to the Bible to pray, and I think today we're going to learn by both praying the Psalms and by also learning different forms of prayer and also what the Bible can teach us about prayer. And so I want to read to you a psalm. It's Psalm 77. It says, "In the day of trouble, I seek the Lord." That's the heading. So I'll read a part of it. It says, "I cry out to God, aloud to God, and He will hear me. In the day of my trouble, I seek the Lord. In the night, my hand is stretched out without wearing. My soul refuses to be comforted. When I remember God, I moan. When I meditate, my spirit faints." And then we'll finish the rest of it in a little bit. But I just think it's interesting. He says, "In the day of trouble, I seek the Lord, and in the night, my hand is stretched out without wearing." So like he's basically like crying out to God, and like he's not even tired. He's just like agonizing just over how frustrated and just really like discomforted he is. He says, "When I remember God, I moan." Like like I don't know. I don't know when you guys grunt or moan. Maybe your parents tell you to go do the laundry or dishes, and you're like, "Oh," right? So maybe it's a little bit like that. Like, when I meditate, my spirit faints. Um, this person, the author of the psalm, is just like letting God know of his discomfort, like physically and just like emotionally, like with bellows, like with moans. And so my question here is, does God get mad if we show emotion in our prayer? If we show disappointment in our prayer? If we complain in our prayer? What do you think? Give you guys a minute to think. The fact is, a lot of these psalms, maybe you guys have heard, are called lament psalms. Basically, these are psalms that cry out to God in deep emotional distress. And I wonder, why do we often hide in prayer? Why do we often feel like we need to bring forth God all the clean stuff, but then hide the rest of the garbage? And I know for me, I felt like that maybe a lot of times growing up, and even now. When I come to God, I want to sound holy. I want to sound pious. I want to be like, "Oh Lord, you are good and I am thankful." Amen, right? Like, because it feels bad to complain to God about a situation, being like, "God, I hate this. I'm frustrated. Get me out of here. I hate this situation. I hate this Corona situation. I hate the situation my life is in," or whatever, right? Like whatever you're frustrated by. And then I wonder why sometimes we might feel a little bit ashamed to bring that up to God for whatever reason. But here, I think I'm really encouraged. Like, he cries aloud to God, just in really honest, authentic. Like, he's not even just, I don't know. He's just saying how he feels. He's just saying, like, "This is my soul. I am distraught, and it does not want to be comforted. I am frustrated." It's kind of funny. It's sometimes the Bible is funny. I don't think the author meant to be funny, but I laughed a little bit because because sometimes it's funny reading about people's pains. It's kind of evil, but verse 4 I think is kind of funny. It says, "You hold my eyelids open. I am so troubled that I cannot speak." I mean, like that's an actual imagery of like God. I don't have very big eyelids, but like God, like holding somebody's eyelids open. That's how that's how troubled he is. Like he's struggling so much here, and we'll continue reading. He says, "I consider the days of old, the years long ago. I said, let me remember my song in the night. Let me meditate in my heart. That my spirit made a diligent search." Okay, so we're going to make a little transition and shift here. But hopefully you guys can see that in the first first few verses of the psalm anyway, in verse 77, I think we see that it is okay to express to God how we feel. It is okay to express to God what is it that we're feeling, even if that means just being really honest and really vulnerable. I think that's the key word, really real. And you know what, honestly, if you can't be vulnerable with anybody else, why not be God? Why not let him know, hey God, I think it really sucks that I can't graduate normally this year, or I think it's really terrible that I can't go back to school, or I feel so bored at home, God, I don't know what to do. I feel so purposeless. I feel lost a lot of hope. I feel like for a lot of people this season, hope is something that seems so far on the horizon, right? It seems so far in the future because we don't know when this is going to end. And so that was the first kind of part about, hey, if you are feeling something right now, whatever emotion that is, and maybe for some of you, you're like completely okay, but I don't think anybody's like completely happy that we have to be stuck in this quarantine and lots of lives are being affected by this crisis. So why not pray those things to God? Like I don't think this God judges any prayer that comes to him. I think it's like I don't know. I mean, this is another dumb example. Like if you text somebody back, I think sometimes like the worst part is like like if you get ghosted, right? Like if you text somebody and they don't text you back, like you want to hear something back from them. And in the same way, I think God just wants to hear some kind of communication from you, with you. And honestly, if you have trouble finding the words to say, I think one of the best ideas is just to pick one of these psalms. I'll give you a few psalms at the end, and then just read through the psalms as if you're praying them. So if you don't know what to say, just read Psalm 77. Say, I cry aloud to you, God. I cry aloud to you, and you'll hear me. In my day of trouble, I seek you. My soul refuses to be comforted. Just like read the whole thing through and see how that affects your prayer life. Let's see. And then, but the other point I want to make with you here is this guy transitions from basically complaining, lamenting, just kind of talking about how hard things are for him. And then, but then he transitions here. He says, let me remember my song in the night. Let me meditate in my heart that my spirit made a diligent search. So after all this kind of honest talk to God, he says, well, then I kind of thought for myself, like, what is true? What's really happening? Will the Lord spurn forever and never again be favorable? Has his steadfast love forever ceased? Are his promises at an end for all time? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he in anger shut up his compassion? So these are kind of like rhetorical almost questions that he asks himself. After saying, God, my life is really difficult and my heart hurts, he then does basically like an inventory of himself and says, you know what? Like, is God really going to ignore me forever? Is he not a loving God? Is God not a gracious God? Is he not a compassionate God? He just kind of asks those things, and then he goes to say in verse 11, he says, I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your wonders of old. I will ponder all your work and meditate on your mighty deeds. Your way, O God, is holy. What God is great like our God? You are the God who works wonders. You have made known your might among the peoples. You with your arm redeemed your people, the children of Jacob and Joseph. So now he's like recalling all the good stuff God has done. Who is like you, God? He says, who is like you? I don't know anybody like you. I don't know anybody this great. You have made your way known among all the people, right? Everybody that has seen your goodness. And then he says, when the water saw you, O God, when the water saw you, they trembled. Indeed, the deep trembled, the clouds poured out water. Skies gave forth thunder. Your arrows flashed on every side. The crash of your thunder was in the whirlwind. Your lightning lighted up the world. The earth trembled and shook. Your way was through the sea, your path through the great waters, yet your footprints were unseen. You led your people like a flock by the hands of Moses and Aaron. And so he's actually recalling the stuff that happened in history, in the Bible. A few chapters back, he was talking about what happened in the book of Exodus, how God led his people from slavery in Egypt and through the waters, and he led them by, these miraculous things, right? And he helped be faithful to his people Israel. And so, I think my own learning from this section is that I think first, it is good to sometimes complain and vent to God. And I think it's normal that you should. But I think that in itself is not a complete prayer life. I think for us, complaining feels good and necessary, but eventually we need to examine ourselves and be like, okay, what is God trying to teach me this season? And then eventually, hopefully, upward, even when I don't want to, because that's kind of what the psalmist did here. He kind of vented to God, and then he took some time to really think about, okay, what is happening here? I need to examine myself and see who God really is. And then he lists all these things about the character of God, his goodness, his compassion. And he remembers actual physical things that God has done in history, like leading the people of Israel, right, through Moses out of the wilderness. He even mentions Jacob and Joseph. And so he's just remembering all these things God has done. And if he has been faithful every time in the past, then he's going to continue to be faithful, right? And so what are examples of God's faithfulness to you? I remember a few, two things that come to mind. So when I get discouraged and then when I pray these things, it's good for me to remember, you know what? God's been faithful to me up until this point, and he will continue to be faithful. One was when I was in Houston. I was kind of a naive, young kid starting out. And I remember I got my backpack stolen. I went to a local gym, and I put my backpack in the gym, and I don't know, I guess I was just naive. I didn't realize there were bad people in the world. I put my bag in the locker and didn't put a lock on it because I'm like, well, how dangerous could it be? Because I grew up in Fort Collins, Colorado, where people are nice and people don't steal stuff. But then after my workout, I came back to my locker, and my backpack was gone. My wallet, I think even my passport was in there. So my driver's license, my keys, my credit cards, everything was gone. My laundry card, everything was gone in that little backpack. And so my whole world was flipped upside down. And over the next 24 hours, I had to call a bunch of people. I think I spent the night at my pastor's house that I just started working the job there at. And long story short, for whatever reason, we went back to the gym the next day, and because the previous day we looked for the bag all over and we couldn't find it. Somebody stole the bag. And then for whatever reason, we went back to that locker and we opened it, and voila, the bag was there. And literally all they took was $2 and change and my laundry card. My credit card was there, my keys were there. And so lesson was I shouldn't be so naive and leave my backpack in without a lock. But with that said, it showed God's faithfulness to me. He definitely could have, I guess, taught me a lesson, right, and just had all my stuff stolen and never returned. But man, I prayed really hard that night. I know other people prayed really hard for me that night too, just to I don't know, God, I don't know what to do. I'm frustrated. Save me, help me from this situation. And he didn't have to, but somehow he helped me get my backpack and life back. It had literally all my belongings and my money and my car keys. And so it's little things like that that just remind me, man, God doesn't have to care, but he does, and he is faithful. And in the middle of times and frustrations where it feels like I am totally stuck, I don't have to be, because I know that whatever happens, God is faithful. Like I know that from just experiences like that and countless other stories like that. Dude, by the way, how do we hit 20 minutes? I am very long-winded. I need to try to condense these because you guys are not gonna make it to the end of the video if I go longer than a few minutes. But anyhow, yeah. So I hope for you guys, like, can you guys think of times in your life this week where you know for sure, even in your short lives, even if you're in middle school or high school or whatever, like, can you think of times where, hey, God has proved faithful. He has actually done good things for me and my family, whether it was answering a prayer, opening up a door, times where you just felt close to Him. I think just remembering those things really help us, and to balance that out with authentic prayer, real prayer. And so here are a few closing questions just to get you guys thinking. What disappointments have you prayed to God, or have you not prayed to God? And make it recent, or make it as deep or as shallow as you wanted to. But think about that. What are some of those things that you can bring up to God this week? What ways can you be honest with God this week in your prayer life? And once again, if you're having a hard time getting started in prayer, I encourage you guys to look at some of these Psalms. I'll write them down. I guess I have to write them down. So Psalm 102, I'm going backwards, 77, 55, 42, and 13. So I wrote it down. Look at all this technology. Oh man, look at how crooked it is. So look at Psalm 13, 45. Is that what it says? 55, 77, and 105. That's the link there. But I encourage you guys to look at any of those Psalms because, or really anywhere in the Bible. But those are really good examples of Psalms that do this lamenting well, where the psalmist starts out with a complaint and venting and frustration, and then eventually he ends by remembering God's promises, by looking upward to who God is. And then finally, how can you be reminded that God still cares? I encourage you guys to maybe write down or think of a few things that God has already done for you. Even in the midst this COVID crisis, I think we all have a bunch to be thankful for, whether it's Him sustaining us, bringing you guys together. Hey, he brought you guys a youth pastor. Look at that. Right? I mean, and that's something to be thankful for. Honestly, for me too, that's God's faithfulness to me and Gracia. He provided for us in a season where really I shouldn't be working right now. So I don't deserve a job right now. So I think that's awesome. That's a good reminder for me too. And so, yeah, I encourage you guys to think through some of those questions. I hope most of you made it through the end of the video. I'd be really surprised if some... No, I'm going to be optimistic. So anyhow, I don't really have a good way to close. But thank you for watching. And hopefully we will hang out next week too. We'll see how this one goes. And then if this goes well, we'll continue doing it for the future. So encourage you guys to meditate, read over these things, and hopefully this was encouraging to you. And peace out. Thanks.